from interviews and researchers' reflections, and a combination of both in the discussion in the follow-up interview, giving voice and member check to participants in the analysis stage of data. A thick description of data will ensure richness, protect the authenticity of the instructor's orchestration of ICs to mediate SLA, and their perceptions on the role that the environment plays in influencing such implementation online. The assertions that will be drawn from such an investigation will provide practical ways for online ESOL instructors to implement ICs through a framework that reflects the granularity of such application. It intends to provide the transferability of findings to similar settings of teaching adult ESOL learners in a synchronous mode. My interpretation of data will align with the collective case study designed for the sake of dependability. In other words, while the study values the particularities of each case, the analysis will also investigate each case holistically. The reflexive approach of data analysis also aims to ensure dependability and confirmability. Hence, my research journal will serve as a venue for reflexivity, as I will critically reflect on my own perceptions, biases, and assumptions on the phenomenon of study, ICs mediating SLA. I will also reflect on, check, and confirm data in the multiple formats and multiple ways of analysis. Thank you.
Thanks. I see Susan's on. Great, wonderful. And that was 16 minutes, almost 17.
Yeah, 16:59 or something.
Susan, you're up.
And my apologies, I did start recording, Chaudia, so you have some of it recorded if you want to look back too.
Thank you. I think Rima is recording from her desktop.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, Rima.
Yeah. Thank you, Rima, for that.
I just stopped it though. I'll send you the link to the one that I recorded. So I captured all of Shadia's.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Perfect.
Pas de quoi? Pas de quoi?
Yeah.
And Liz, thank you so much for stepping in. So Liz, could you just quickly update me? Did you do check-ins or did you just begin with Chaudia's rehearsal?
No, we did check-ins, but I will admit that everybody was very brief. But
oh yeah, see when the cat's away.
Yeah, when the cat's away, exactly.
But everyone has been really, really productive in these last 2 weeks.
No kidding. We're going to have a mountain of defenses. My gosh, it's going to be a busy next couple of months. And
I was really. Go ahead.
Sorry, one last question. Noreen, did you do your little pitch?
No, it sounded like they had a pretty full schedule, so I suggested that maybe I wait till they're off the hot seat with their presentations.
Yeah, we'll break
and they
it
can
up.
relax.
We'll do you in the middle. Okay, so feedback from those of you that saw the entire presentation. Just jump in. You don't have to raise your hand.
I'm just going to the first one.
I mean, it's looking good from what I see. You've got the slots numbered. Go ahead.
Awesome. It's May. Sorry I missed the check-in.
May.
I had power problems too. Great job, Shadia. Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
You keep seeing massive improvements every time I see it. Your first guy on the first slide looks squeezed. Looks a little squished.
Here? This guy?
The first one.
Oh, the first one.
That one, yeah.
This one?
He's
push it back. I mean, here.
Right. Your
Yeah,
little
it looks
guy.
like he's gaining weight during the presentation.
He looks a little like his head got like put in a squeeze of some kind.
Okay. Okay.
And
fix that.
You
Gotta
said
fix some notes.
arisen instead of arisen.
Arisen. I think that's okay.
Bring up the slide. You only did it once that I noticed. Bring up the slide before you start talking to it. I think that was only on slide 2, maybe. I don't know.
Say that again.
Bring up the slide before you start talking about it.
Okay.
It was just,
so
I
it's
just noticed it on slide 2. I don't know if it happened again.
so there is a delay, a little delay.
Yeah, like wait until you see it up on the shared screen.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Great job. Woohoo.
Thank you.
Anyone else I don't notice any page numbers to the proposal. Did that seem necessary to those of you that watched the whole rehearsal?
She does have them in
She had
at key
Oh, okay,
points.
good.
Yeah.
I have them
So,
in
yeah.
each part. Oh, shall I include them in
Yeah.
here as well? Okay. Okay. I'm not in my work space in here. I'm trying to find the pen,
actual
this is
pencil
my
or pen,
husband,
yeah.
right? Sorry about that. Seems like my husband never writes anything anywhere. Okay. I'll take notes for myself.
I don't
Yes.
think you need a page number on this one. Because
Okay.
this is just you're just saying where we're going on this journey, right? So
Yeah.
the other ones I thought were really, really helpful as you where you did bring them in.
Right. They're in each of these little guys conversing.
I'd love
Yeah.
to know who actually invented these little guys, because I would always
I
like
know.
to cite where I get them, but they're just everywhere.
These are, I call it May's guy, maze buddy, because he's the one really used buddy.
Shadia, can you,
I got
it's
a little
Liz.
carried away with them, didn't I?
Shadia, it's Liz.
Okay.
Can you go to slide 12, please?
Side 12, sure. 12, okay.
This is being really picky. I think environment is spelled wrong. Synchronous
Ooh.
environment interactions. That's picky. Isn't
Oh,
it?
yes, yes. The good catch, though.
Otherwise, you're fabulous.
And don't you worry about being picky like that, because
Of
those are
course,
the
we
kinds
gotta
of things at this level of study that'll hurt the eyes of some committee member.
While
Hi,
you're on
this
this,
is,
oh, go ahead.
sorry. Hi, it's Noreen here. I just had a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Will you, on slide 17, you talked about creating interview guides, and I'm understanding you'd have 2 interviews. So would you have 2 interview guides, or only an interview guide for the first interview because of what you're looking for is different in the first interview to what it would be in the second interview? I just wasn't clear if you were going to have 2 interview guides or just 1.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, it will be only one interview for the semi-structured interviews questions, because as I mentioned, the second interview or the follow-up interview will be in the form of a discussion after actually tracing, looking at the recorded observations and doing the thematic analysis and doing the analysis of how the environment influences the use of ICs. So I will pick instances of environmental influence on the use of ICs and discuss those with the participants. So it will be more of a discussion.
I wonder if perhaps on this slide then you could somehow clarify that the interview
Sure.
guide will just be for the first one. I don't know.
Sure.
And then also perhaps then you should again let people know that the first one is a case selection questionnaire, and their second instrument will be the different type of interview question, or it won't even be a questionnaire, but it'll be a different kind of interview instrument that you're using. So people are
Okay.
clear that you're using 2 different interview instruments.
If I could jump in, do you make that clear in your proposal?
She talks about it earlier, but here she's talking about her
No.
techniques.
No, I'm talking about the actual proposal, because the committee would have read it.
And the actual proposal, yeah, it's I mean, the case selection questionnaire is just to select the participant themselves, because there are different, criteria to be eligible to be regarded as, what I defined an expert in ESOL teaching, particular for this study. But the interview guide is the guide for the semi-structured interview questions. In my proposal, I talked about how the follow-up interview will be in terms of a discussion in only, and it will not have a guide.
Okay.
It will be based on what I will get from the data analysis.
But as Noreen says, then you are only at 16 minutes. So yes, you could spend a little time clarifying that maybe.
This, okay. Sure.
Yeah, I think where the confusion comes for me is she's using the term data collection techniques, whereas I think I'm thinking data collection instruments in my head.
Mhm.
So I think
Right.
that's where the confusion is coming in for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean the terminology, the variation in terminology is definitely one thing that many of us, it's like we're using different things, and I just from in my mind, I feel like techniques is clearer and easier to kind of capture and explain, but I know in others, I mean, even different scholars, they use, techniques and instruments as the same. So we had this discussion in 802, we had in 805 as the terminology as well. I just picked techniques for my study, but I mean, I can change it to instruments.
And, Noreen,
if it's better for everybody else, then
well, and
to avoid
Noreen is,
confusion.
Noreen's a little bit of a till of the hen when it comes to data
Right.
and semantics. So maybe leave it, but that might be a question that comes up with your committee. So prepare for it, or even be open. If you can't defend it, be open to, I'll go with what the majority of the committee says. They like that kind of thing,
Yeah.
a little discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, if everybody else is using, even in this room, instruments, then I'll just change it to instruments.
No, don't.
No, don't change it. Don't change
Okay.
it. It's just that, what I'm hearing is you're using a number of techniques, but I'm only seeing 3 of the techniques that you're using here. You're using a different kind of technique to get information in that follow-up discussion, and it's not being reflected here on this slide. Can you see what I'm talking about? It's like it's missing an action. But if you can speak to it, like Susan says, during your oral, you've got your bases covered. Because I may be the only one that notices that and says, where is it? Right? They may, having read your dissertation proposal and having gone through all this with you, they may not notice that.
I mean, to be honest, that's why I added like a short phrase to kind of, I threw in there the fact that it will be, because I noticed here that it's not really clear, So I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'll definitely go ahead and make that.
The
there.
reason that Noreen and I both said in unison, no, don't change it, is when you reach this stage, your committee's already in the process of approving the proposal. So don't make any changes now, or else they'll jump on you and say, what else have you changed? My God, we've approved that proposal. So no changes now to the defense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Except in your slideshow, of course.
Yeah. And then I totally missed this when you were talking about, reliability, all of that. And you were talking about confirming your data. When you're going through the coding process, especially when you're doing your thematic analysis part, do you have a plan for, say, perhaps a second coder to help you so that you can say, with this degree of confidence, I can say that my data analysis themes are replicable in another study done under similar circumstances to this study. Yeah, confirmability. You don't have any plan?
I'm hoping it will be brought up at some point. I don't have a plan for that.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, what I attended many proposal defenses like Hart, for instance, and Saudia, and our board members. They were talking about the second coder, which caught my attention, but I didn't get a chance to talk about that with my supervisors or committee. Yeah.
So maybe if that's something that they ask you about, you might present this as a possibility or something like that. But I just wanted it to sort of be in the back of your mind when they ask about that.
All right.
And
Thank
finally, just one more thing on slide 9. You have focuses, and I believe the word should be foci.
Oh. Thank you.
No problem. How can you tell I've watched 1,000 of these presentations?
I know, right? Yeah, here. Yes, yes, yes.
So,
Thank
hello,
you. Sorry.
hello,
Thank
Chadia.
you. Hi, Dan. Writing this. I'm listening. Yes.
Yeah, great job. I really liked the confidence in your voice through the whole thing, especially when you're saying things like "I believe," da da da. I believe, da da da. Really, really strong. What I would like to talk about is acronyms, and this is a good slide for that because you have quite a few acronyms there or abbreviations.
Yeah.
Some of them are defined when you give the research questions, the ICs and the SLA, I think it was, in the research questions, which is slide 6, 5, somewhere in there.
5.
5. I'm wondering if that's just even a little bit too late. I'm wondering if by that time you've already referred to ICs, and I'm just wondering if perhaps those definitions of what ICs are could be made. Yeah, even just right there where you have instructional conversations, if you had the IC in brackets there, it would help those of us who know nothing about language learning, that sort of thing. So yeah, the earlier you could make that definition, probably the better.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point.
On this slide. Yeah.
Yes, I think it will be perfectly fit in slide 3. They're all here. IC, SLA, SCT. They're all there. So
that would be great.
I'll add it to slide 3. Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. Slide 3. Wow.
Anyone else?
So it's Peggy, and I have a few that are more about your processes. So I did write lots of notes on some of the graphic stuff, but I will I really want to ask about some of the processes. So if we can go to slide 18.
Sure. Slide 18. So if we go backward, it's easier, I guess. Oh, it doesn't go backward.
We're never moving backwards in this program.
Didn't want to go backwards. Yeah, this one.
So yeah, so in the circle on the left, tell me the difference between the interpretation, the two steps that are both interpretation. Like as you go around the circle.
Here? This
one
on
on the
this
left
one?
and one on the right, they're both interpretation. So is there something, are they identical?
They're identical. I wanted to do like an arrow that goes like that way, and it didn't want to do that. It didn't really fit that. Spent a long time doing it, and then the whole graphic will mess up because I want it to be like go in interpretation, like circular type of thing. And I'm just ended up by being lazy and put interpretation here and here so that it goes like you're doing a thick description, then you interpret, you reflex, and then you interpret again, and then you describe, you reflect, interpret. So that's the process. That's at least in my mind. I don't know. It's not clear here.
I would just suggest when you look back at when you look at your script again.
Okay.
It sounded like the interpretation after thick description was slightly different than after the reflexivity part. So it felt like even what you're saying, it wasn't the graphic wasn't the way you wanted it. So it sounds like my wanting of something is, I think, probably matching with your desire to have presented it differently.
Yes, the first interpretation of the themes of the instructors, their perceptions about and assumptions about SLA and how, and what ICs are and how they should be applied. That's a different interpretation from, because it's going to be from their interviews. But the second interpretation is going to be based on Tharpa and Gallimore and Goldenberg's 10 element of ICs, which are basically, they are interchangeable in a way. And they're parts of a framework that depicts the application of ICs, but it doesn't really go into the classrooms of how it's applied in the classroom, or even particularly on how it's applied online. So the second interpretation will be using those 7 means and will be referring to the 10 elements, but it will be from a constructivist approach, because these 7 means of assistance and 10 elements are based on cognitivism and behaviorism, right? But my interpretation will be based, referring to them, but taking the constructivist approach.
What about just putting in interpretation A and then interpretation B so that they're different animals?
The first time you made me think about it, probably that's what I was trying to do in that circle. There's interpretation, but I didn't really separate them. I mean, there are separate, definitely, now that I'm explaining them, but I didn't really make it clear that they are separate.
And I
Yeah,
will say
thank
your
you.
description that you just gave was fabulous. Like
Thank you.
really totally, like I totally got it when you were explaining it. So it's like, you've got it, it's in your head, just needs to come out in the graphics and the text a bit. So you're almost there.
Okay.
Can
Thank
we
you.
go? Can we go to slide 17?
Yep, slide 18. And now slide 17.
So there was something you had mentioned using Google Drive, and I was just wondering if you could tell us what will be held up on Google Drive. And the reason why I'm asking this is it fits in with issues of ethics and you being in 100% control of your data. So can you talk? So I know you used the word, but I lost what you said. So how are you using Google Drive?
I was talking about the third data collection instrument.
Okay.
Which is the research journal, where I will be collecting my notes and reflections from the interviews, from the recorded observations for each case, because I have the within case, and then I have the cross cases, so a lot of notes and a lot of reflections. Then I was asked about my committee from my supervisors to kind of clarify, like, where are you going to store all these things, right? And I put Padlet back then, and they said, well, is that a secure platform? I went back and turned out that Padlet is not really secure. So I changed it to Google Drive. So here I'm trying to say that all those notes and reflections on all that data pretty much will be safely secured in my Google Drive. I couldn't find any other place where it could be more secured, because I have, a lot of different passwords and different, I don't know, my husband is doing at home to kind of protect everything. That's what I mean by my Google Drive there.
And do you have a backup? Will you have a backup to that?
Other than my Google Drive? Yeah, well, I should have, yeah.
Okay.
USB.
So I'm not
You
the one.
She sounds so casual about that. Wait till Google Drive flops.
I'm not the one who usually comes in with the doom and gloom horror story, but I will say one. So I was at a conference. It was a ICDE conference in Toronto, actually, and there were two people in one of the rooms I was in, and they were talking about having just finished authoring a book together they work remotely, they live and work in different cities, they did everything through Google Drive, and their entire book, along with, I don't know, 40,000 other 40,000 other accounts or whatever, the content was all lost. So it was lost by Google. It was on Google's side of the equation. But neither one of them, I'm laughing, it's so heartbreaking. Neither one of them had actually backed it up.
And for your info, Noreen, I have backed up to a massive hard drive.
So the reason why I asked is it would be so heartbreaking if someone actually lost all of their data. So for a lot of us, we bought external hard drives. We have those that are backing up, all of our content. So if you're working on Google Drive, then maybe every once in a while you're grabbing everything and backing it up to a physical device that is held in your possession.
Yeah.
That is very valid. I mean, these are the things that I'm very glad that I'm attending 806, because these are the things that you assume, yeah, well, it's a done deal, and then you don't write it, right? But for me, every day, I work on my even draft, the separate, different drafts, even for the PowerPoint, draft 1.1.2.3, whatever, and I send it to my emails, and then I'm like, well, hell no. Well, how about if the Gmail is down? How am I going to access that? So
Exactly.
I have a hard drive, like a big hard drive, and I have a USB, the one that they gave us at in Edmonton, in AU, at Athabasca. So it's just dear to me. I use that one and another big one to every single night for anything that I write, and I also upload it to my Google Drive and send it to my emails. Well, definitely I didn't write anything of this proposal. I just put Google Drive.
Before you carry on, Peggy Lynn, is it just me, or is Chowdia, is her audio not perfect? Could you raise your hand if she cuts out on you a little bit, or it gets to be gobbledygook?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chowdia, be careful of that for the defense. Another microphone.
This is the most expensive headset that you can have. This is a setup of, yesterday I wanted to rehearse with May and Catherine and everybody in the cohort, our group, and it was chaotic. My sound was bad, my internet was down, everything was terrible. So this is the best that we could do. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. We change our router. This is like a $350.
Have you tried simply, are you working on a laptop? Have you tried simply not using the mic, using your laptop mic? That's what I use all the time.
Well, I tried it yesterday with May, and it was not good.
Okay.
So I don't know what I'm going to be doing. We talked about maybe taking the whole laptop somewhere to one of the IT people to kind of look at it before the defense.
A few years ago, I did a research project with a couple gentlemen, and we used a lot of different headsets and devices, and there's actually a publication on it in Erotle. And what we found was the cheapest was the best.
Okay. It's good to know. Okay. Yesterday was bad. I don't know how was my voice and my sound and my connectivity when I was doing the rehearsal. I hope it wasn't terrible. I'll just look into that. I really don't know what to do, but yeah.
And it doesn't seem, I was watching to see if it was happening when you touched your face or anything, but it doesn't seem connected to that. Just sometimes, or movement. I don't know. Just sometimes.
And Shadia, regarding yesterday, this May, actually the PC sound was better, remember? It started to get flaky a little while later, but it was better than the headset.
It's Warren here. I'm going to suggest that you turn your camera off, because that's really a high, humongous bandwidth absorber.
Well, I didn't Did I have my camera on the whole time? I wasn't seeing my face. How did I sound if you saw me when I'm presenting? And that's another thing, Susan. I mean, everybody, this whole camera on off thing for defenses is one of the late discussions that we have, because there's a lot of inconsistency
Well,
when
it
it comes to
seems
the.
it seems to be only Hiroshi, right, so far, who had the.
No, I had it too, May.
Oh, I find that
So did
very
Catherine.
yeah, very inconsiderate of committee members. I might
No, they
actually
asked me to put the, we need to see your face. So,
other than introducing you at the beginning.
yeah, no, for all the questions. Yep.
And same with Catherine.
Okay, there's a new movement then, because I would tend to say, gee, my bandwidth isn't good enough. I didn't know it had to be on, but I guess you can.
My supervisor asked me the day before, would I please be comfortable turning on the camera for Q&A, and that the committee members would appreciate seeing me, and that it was fine to go ahead and use my notes. And I said my only concern was, can I use my notes? And so I said, okay, cool, yep.
Okay.
The funny thing with me, it's May again, was that I had some backup slides that I put up after the presentation to help me, just my theoretical framework and so on. And they were fine with that. And I couldn't see them. I could only see my slide. So I have no idea what I look like. I know I was looking all over the place, but it was much easier for me than seeing their faces. I think that would have been quite disarming for me. So I sort of got around, it was a workaround. By having my slides up, I couldn't see their faces.
Okay, so this is good new information.
And I really appreciated seeing their faces.
Okay, so we better work with the assumption that moving forward, you're going to have your video on. If it'll be a pleasant surprise if you don't, or as who was it? Catherine just said you appreciated seeing them. I don't like seeing me or others. It must be because I just get used to this as a telephone. It's not replacing face to face. Anyway, so we all have our own comfort zones, but let's say to everybody moving forward, assume that they're going to ask for the video to be on. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I can't see, I don't know what's with Teams or not, but I couldn't see. I had my camera on the whole rehearsal time until right now I turned it off. But I just can't see because I have two screens. So I just see the screen of the presenter view and the other one. So I don't see any people or anything, just my screens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody wanted to say something?
Yeah, so it's Peggy Lynn again. So may I ask my third process question?
Oh, please.
So slide 14, in the text of slide 14, you were talking about Mohammed's recommendations. What wasn't clear was how are you using the recommendations for selection?
Or will be the recommendations include many competencies. I will be using the recommendations for the developed competencies for facilitating learning and pedagogical strategies. The selection criteria questionnaire has questions that kind of address that to see how they kind of facilitate and the different pedagogical strategies that can I use. So it's in the questionnaire.
So is it that you'll be selecting participants based on whether or not they do follow those two recommendations from Mohammed?
No, but
like it just it wasn't really clear how you state the recommendations. It wasn't really clear the connection, and I'm sure it's written in the proposal. Right. It's just in the presentation, it wasn't really like yes. the first criteria is obvious, right? You're saying a minimum of 3 years teaching. That means the participants that you're choosing you're requesting that they have a minimum of 3 years of experience. So in regards to Mohammed's recommendations, are you requiring that the participants are following some of those?
Yeah, some of the well, I have the list, right? And in my questionnaire, I picked a few major ones, right? That related to facilitation and related to pedagogical strategies online, right? And I kind of put some questions about that. So yes, I'm trying to define experts in here, right? And the word expert for me is just very problematic because it's kind of very strong, right?
Absolutely.
And I've been like struggling with that word like from day one, because this isn't a study that is, trying to investigate anyone teaching online or any teacher, right, using ICs. No, it's a teacher that's been using ICs intentionally, knows about what ICs are, at least talk, about it and related to SLA, and also familiar with the competencies of, online teaching synchronously in particular, aware of the skills required for ICs. All of this is the combination of an expert for me, and I defined it in my proposal.
Right.
I
think
so that's why
I'm thinking that it may just be a writing exercise in the sense that there's 4 points, 3 of them are attributes, right? The first one is experience, the third one is awareness, the fourth one is experience. I think grammatically, if you thought of a way to rewrite the second one so that it too follows with the other 4.
Yeah. Well, initially I started with facilitating learning and having or something pedagogical strategies or following as per Ali's recommendation. That's how it was initially in my previous draft.
Right.
But PowerPoint. Okay, I'll go back to that.
Yeah.
But this my supervisor, recommend having these competencies, let's say, right? I can just get rid of recommendations if it's confusing, right? It's basically having competencies for facilitating learning and having, and pedagogical strategies for online learning.
Okay, so then maybe it could just be possess competencies for blah, 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 and skip the Ali 2019 recommendations developed.
Yep. Thank you. That.
And
a second.
So me being me, I'm gonna bring up some of the graphic stuff. I do love the consistency in the branding. You did an awesome job on that. So really, this is just about making it just a smidgen more awesome. So can you go to which ones were they? Starting on slide 11. All the ones that follow after 11 that were I guess start with 12. Right? Yeah. You did a really great job. I thought 11 was very complex, and I thought you did a really great job on presenting it and say, look, this is the whole landscape, and I thought this was awesome. So go to the next slide. So for each of the subsequent ones, I am going to suggest. So for that, the cutout box that you're using in the middle, I'm going to suggest something for each one of them, and that is to go through meticulously for each of them and crop out, make the box smaller, crop out the bottom and the top where you end up little bits and pieces of color that are sometimes there, sometimes not there. And you can cut everything on the left-hand side where it says, like in this slide, paradigm and guiding theories, because every time you list that, it's up in the bubble box with the little guy on the left-hand side, top left-hand corner. So you can get rid of that. And the reason why I suggested is in one of them, it actually becomes problematic. Not this one, but one further along. There ends up being a hiccup with it. So you can actually just crop for the left and get rid of them all. And I think that's going to solve the little hiccups for the
Right.
next few slides.
This.
Slide 10.
So get rid of. So crop research methodology because it's already in this guy bubble.
Exactly. And here's an example where, like, under qualitative research, there's a little orange
There's a little
bit,
right.
but it's not
Yeah.
under the other two. So it's just like if you cropped up close enough, you can get rid of that. Does that make
This is
sense?
me being lazy, Peggy Lynn. I noticed all of them.
And
And
this
I got
is me being Peggy
I'm just gonna
Lynn,
keep
so-
it. But you're Peggy Lynn to like, no, take them off. Okay, so I'm waiting for somebody to tell me take them off. It's like, okay, I see that. That's annoying, but you know, whatever.
Can we go to slide? Can we go to
This
slide
is
10?
no time to get lazy.
I know, right? You do all that job and then you do like this little thing. Yes.
Yeah, follow Catherine's advice. You can sleep after proposal defense, right?
Yes.
So can we go to slide 10?
10.
Nice
Well-
happy faces. Under axiology, you can get rid of the ampersand at the far right. It's just, and if we could go to slide 3.
Slide 10. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
On my phone. Okay, slide 3.
Yep.
Very basic, I know.
So the right-hand side of this illustration is a bigger size than the left-hand side of the illustration. So that means the line in the middle is off and the bottom edge is off.
Oh, yeah, it's like this. I didn't notice that. Okay, thank you. Thank you. See, everybody has not rehearsed. You should rehearse. 'Cause you don't.
And I'm just going to add.
Thing.
I'm just going to add to Noreen's comment about second coder, and that was it was really important for me to have a second coder, like really important. But the interesting thing was not all of my committee actually agreed with second coder, and so one actually said that all the work had to be mine and that I wasn't allowed to have a second coder. That all the grunt work needed to be mine.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not what I did because I had a second coder. But so I just thought I'd toss that out in the sense that really it's an important conversation to have with your committee, and that there is a wide range of really strongly held beliefs going in different directions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to toss that out just so there's a bit of a fullness in that discussion.
Yes, because actually, as I look back to cohort 1 at the very beginning, until about cohort 5, no one was asking for a second coder because it costs money, I would gather. And then we started getting people who were being subsidized by their institutions and were being offered second coders. And then it started evolving. So it is an interesting discussion because, yeah, it seems to be, to date, the people with second coders have been people who are being funded, which means that they can afford a second coder.
Right.
Not necessarily so, Susan. I've done second coding for a lot of people.
Well, yes.
I
but
think
that's-
it really depends on the person. Like many people, they were absolutely stunned when I mentioned the idea of a second coder. They didn't need one.
Well, yes, but also you're a marvelous person to be volunteering to second code. So everybody write down Noreen's name, obviously.
That's spelled
That's what I'm thinking, Noreen.
S-U-S-A-N.
No, I'm a very good second coder. Oh, no. Yeah, okay, take it all back.
You just hung yourself.
I know,
Susan.
I just dug my own grave. Yeah.
So my last comment, Shadia, is I hope with the rigor of tonight, I hope you are feeling more confident because you are absolutely nailing the responses to all of us. So
Yes.
Oh,
I hope you
thank
feel
you.
good because you're really doing well.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody being here and
Okay.
all the feedback and great
And I
catches.
would like to thank you, Chadia, but I would like to really move on because I know that our last session was shorter with me suggesting that this one would be longer. But yeah, we are an hour and 15 into it and we've got 2 more people. So did you decide at the beginning who would be next?
May is, not May, sorry. What am I saying? Anne
Rima
is
or Anne?
going next.
Anne's
I'm
gonna
And
go.
Rima's,
I
Rima, are
opted
you still
out
here?
yeah,
Yes.
I'm still here, but Susan, I opted out. I wasn't able to complete my presentation because I had internet issues.
Okay, well, you know full well, Rima, just email me when you're ready and we'll have a session.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. Thank you so much for confirming. And Susan, since I have the microphone and while Anne is getting ready, I just emailed you the link. I saved it in my Dropbox. If you have issues downloading it, let me know.
Sure, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Noreen, you were just going to talk, you don't have a slideshow or anything, right?
No.
Okay, then I think if we could, you can still share your screen, Anne, or you can still prep. But let's just, if anyone wants to run to the washroom, fine. And Noreen, I'm just going to have her check in because even though we're a little superstitious, we both agreed that it was time to maybe let you know about our project. So run and grab a coffee or a Coke or a glass of wine, or stay and Noreen's going to tell you what she and I have been doing for the last 3 years.
Okay. I guess that means I'm on stage, eh? So it's all Susan's fault. And it started 3 years ago, as she said. And it was just an offhanded observation that Susan made during just a casual conversation her and I were having. And Susan, having learned and worked in the field for quite some time, had begun to notice an absence of references to female pioneers among colleagues and students in the field of distance education and online learning. And during the conversation, she further speculated that maybe the female pioneers in the literature might be sparse as well. So because I grew up in the world of distance education, most of my education has been by various distance means since grade 1. And I've worked in the field since 1998 on and off. I began to really think, well, yeah, there's got to be some female pioneers in our field. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I really didn't know anyone. And at the same time, Susan and I could rattle off all kinds of fathers of distance education and, male pioneers and such. And we thought, this is very odd. And so Susan and I agreed to go off and do a little bit of our own real serious research to see what we could find for female pioneers in the available literature. So a few minutes later, we got together. And while we got together, we announced that we had found countless books and journal articles, blogs, newscasts, interviews, and podcasts on male pioneers in the field. But we had turned up negligible results showcasing female pioneers. And so as we continued to talk about this, one thing led to another, and Susan said she felt that maybe there was a book in all of this. And so she talked me into helping her with this really incredible project.
You fool.
We didn't know it was going to take this long. We didn't. Yeah, so that was a learning experience in itself. So the aim of this book is primarily to introduce female pioneers in online learning to researchers, historians, writers, students, and other stakeholders in our field. And hopefully, in doing so, we will be in some small way honoring and accurately portraying these pioneers, because most of the book comes directly from the pioneers themselves. So it's interviews that we conducted with the pioneers, and then we asked them to contribute whatever photo they would like to contribute for their chapter, and then they also contributed all of the literary resources that they wanted to be sort of captured in their chapter as being part of their contributions to our field. So part of our goal was to provide stakeholders with a handbook that would afford easy access to a comprehensive and a chronologically organized list of their publications. And this list I was just mentioned is at the end of each of their chapters. And our third aim was to assist stakeholders in acquiring new insights into the perspectives, experiences, and contributions of the female pioneers in online learning, and to hopefully gain a new, more comprehensive view of the world in which these women operated, and the contributions that they made, which were actually quite significant in our perspective. So that's a bit about the background and the aims. And I thought maybe I would share just 2 or 3 very short anecdotes that came out of some of the interviews that we did with the women. One of the first ones that really struck me was a story. And I mean, every single one of these women had incredible stories and very unique stories. But one of the ones that stuck with me was related to the Hermes Satellite. The Canadian government had provided some funding for different kinds of organizations to make some use of the Hermes Satellite on just before it was being launched. And so actually 3 of the pioneers we interviewed had something to do with the Hermes Satellite bringing education to Atlantic Canada. Each one of them had a different role that they played. Each one of them did something unique in the role that they had, but all 3 of them were involved in bringing education, first at telemedication for doctors who needed to upgrade and remain current, and then it spread out from telemedication through all different fields, including social work, a variety of higher education opportunities, and even moved down into the K-12 system. So some of their stories about the weather and the things that they put up with, some of their challenges were very, very interesting. Another story that stayed with me was about a woman who came down into the Caribbean after a tropical storm with the team. And the main goal of the team was to help get the infrastructure back up and running for the internet on this island. And she said that at one point things were so bad they didn't know how they could possibly get educational resources to the people who were scattered throughout the island. And so they got a hold of Coke and asked Coke if they could please borrow a corner of their Coke delivery trucks so that they could stack up their resources. And so they rode around the countryside in the Coke truck delivering education that way until they were able to get the system up. Another story of another island out in the West Indies, and another one of our pioneers. She was working in a village at a time when there was a lot of political unrest and a lot of different guerrilla groups running around and claiming territory. And they were heading from one village to another village, and their vehicle broke down part way. And there was a storm coming, and they knew that if they stayed where they were at, that they were really going to be in trouble. And just when they were trying to decide what to do, a Jeep arrived around the corner, and it was filled full of guerrilla warfare men with big machine guns and all kinds of good things like that. And one of the guys jumped out, and although they didn't speak the same language each other, somehow they managed to get across to each other that the women needed to go to this other village. And the guerrilla said, "Come on, ladies, jump on," kind of thing, in with gestures and motions. And the two women were very afraid. They didn't have anything to protect themselves with. They had no way of communicating with anyone else. They didn't have time to even write a note and leave it in their vehicle in case somebody else came along. They just had to hop on and take the ride in the Jeep. And so they did. And all the way there, this pioneer told me she was so sure they were going to stop somewhere along the line and they were going to have their throats cut. And they didn't. And they arrived in the next village, and the fellows gave them great big waves, and off they went. And the third story is a very sad story. And it started at the time of the apartheid in South Africa. One of our pioneers was the head of a group. Its acronym is SAIDE. It was an organization that worked with developing distance education programs for different areas in South Africa. And at that time, Black people in South Africa were denied a higher education, except for a select few who had some kind of leverage to be able to go to face-to-face universities. However, the SAID group had discovered that there were some loopholes in the legislation. And one of the loopholes was that it didn't say anything about providing distance education to Black people through distance means. And so that's what they did. They developed all these different distance programs. Things were not happy. They were not good. She told me of being woken up one night and told to go down to where some of the buildings were that were storing the educational resources. The buildings were on fire. Some of the people who were working there had been macheted to death. Another time she told me that some people were hung. It was not an easy time, but she got through. Her programs got through, and many people got an education because of this incredible woman and her organization. And so those are some of the stories that you would have the opportunity to read about in the book. In terms of the research process, we, after collecting the interview data, it was transcribed. The pioneers got to edit the transcript any which way they so chose to do so. And then Susan and I began to code it using NVivo. And so Susan and I coded the first few interviews together, and then I coded most of the rest of them. And then when I got close to the end, again, Susan came in and she just randomly selected one of the final ones, and we co-coded again. So that we would have not just intercoder reliability stats, but also intra-coder reliability stats. And I have to say, in all of the coding I've done with people, I have never achieved a 98% coding agreement until I coded with Susan, which is just amazing, Susan.
Well, I think that's because we both had the same goals. We had the vision. The vision was the same.
Yeah, I think very much so. The other thing that that we found, I think we found quite interesting, was when we actually looked at the themes that came out of the data. So we did two levels of coding. First, we did a sort of inductive open coding, and then we did axial coding afterwards. And in that process, what happened was things that we never even asked about in the interview. Like, everyone was given a a script of the interview questions. There was no deviation from those questions unless it was a question to clarify a response that had been given. So we gave them the scripts 2 weeks beforehand. So they had lots of time to prepare themselves. And then I stuck to those scripts during the interview. So it was very surprising for us to discover that the most significant theme to come out of the study was about technology when we had never asked a single question about technology. So 1/5 of the conversations somehow involved discussions around technology, which, you know, reflecting upon it makes sense, because without the technology, we could not have online learning, could we? The other one that, again, no question was asked about it, but it was the third most prevalent theme to come out, was the benefits of distance education. We asked about the challenges of distance education, but we never asked a single word or even implied that we were looking for any of the benefits of distance education. It just arose out of the data, and we were very surprised and I think very pleased to see that these women, you know, talked about the benefits of distance education with no encouragement or incentive from us at all. And amongst the benefits of distance education themes, the most prevalent sub-theme was social justice, which just really rang a bell for us, because isn't that what Charles Widemer has always been trying to say about the one of the cornerstones of distance education being education for all. And in some small way, as Susan finishes off everything, wraps it all up, in some small way, I think we were engaged in a little bit of social justice by writing about these women. And I think, Susan, I've said probably way too much.
Well, and you're going to start crying or something.
We just became so attached to these women. Between the interview process, the transcription process, the coding process, the interpretation process, writing the chapters, I swear we have relationships with every one of these women.
I know. It's just amazing. So the reason we feel comfortable, we're going to finish it off now because we've got Anne coming up, but the reason we decided we feel comfortable just sharing this with you tonight is because the book is now with Routledge, and it wasn't, you know, we sent it off to a couple of other places and just got no in 24 hours. And Routledge, no, they're excited. So fingers crossed, we're into the review process, and then they have to determine if they can make money from it. But our sales pitch is it's timeless. It's a historical book. So anyway.
And it's the first one.
And it's the very first one. No one's ever done it. So, and I'm just going to be very vague about this and then we'll move on. When we started this, and we certainly have not written this, or our methodology is not coming from a feminist approach at all. It was simply, why aren't my women quoting Susan Herring? Why don't they know about Star Roxanne Hiltz? Like, they don't know these people. What's wrong? And when we say pioneer, we're talking mainly 70s to 85, let's say. So it's before the World Wide Web, you know, that these people were seeing the potential of it and just waiting for somebody like Berners-Lee or Berners-Lee, I think, to come along with the invention. But the other thing that we're seeing that's very, very interesting, but we'll talk about this at another time, is that some of these theories from men appear at this moment.
I didn't even say anything about that, did I?
Appear
my goodness.
to have come from the works of some of these women and are not cited. But that's a revolution we plan to begin next year. So, with that being said, Anne, we're on to you. And I will get my stopwatch ready. And okay, oh, shades of Ras Al Khaimah. It's reminding me of my previous home. Why isn't your full slide show coming up? You're showing us the one with notes, it looks like. Or was the first one the picture of the camel, Anne? There. Oh. So now it's full screen or slideshow, whatever you're going to use. Okay, looking good. All right, Anne, tell me when you're ready and I will start the stopwatch. You have to unmute your microphone. Anne, can you hear us? You have to unmute your microphone. Can I unmute you? No. We'll just wait a bit. I'm going to, oh, no, I'm going to say Anne's having.
Okay, I'm going to have to just, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to start the presentation. I had to open it from another screen, which I couldn't see.
Okay, and this is also reminding me, Anne sent me a copy of her PowerPoint today. Do that before your defense, everyone. Send it to someone else, because you never know what kind of silly little glitch can occur, and then someone else has your PowerPoint to share it if you can't for some reason. Okay, Anne, are you ready to begin?
Yeah, I have just a couple recommendations for when you're listening to this. If there is anything that you think needs to be cut or added, I would really be helpful. I am going to be introducing my role, which has been a bit of a confusion in putting it together, and I put it into where the case boundaries are. I don't know if that's the best place. So if you could think about that when I'm going through this.
Sure.
It'd be really helpful. Now I've got it down to 23 minutes, and that's if I don't breathe. So we'll see. Let's see how I go. Okay. So
all right.
Welcome to the presentation of my doctoral dissertation study proposal titled A Universal Design for Online Learning Success in Nursing Education. To provide an overview of the presentation, I've used an advanced graphic organizer by Osbill to highlight the key 4 areas with subtopics, while also demonstrating one of the concepts of a universal design for learning theoretical framework of multiple means of representation by visually demonstrating the relationship of these concepts. The background section will include a description of the proposal background, problem statement, purpose, and significance. An overview of the literature will highlight key studies and findings from students without disabilities and those studies that are specific to health sciences. The methodology section includes discussion of the design, case boundaries, secondary data collection tools, considering reliability, validity, and authenticity of the data obtained. And a convergent mixed methods analysis will be included. Finally, consideration of any ethical implications, limitations, and delimitations will be covered. Post-secondary education, student enrollment numbers have been continually rising in Canada. Similarly, students registering an online post-secondary study is growing rapidly, with class sizes increasing by approximately 10% per year in universities and 15% in colleges. These numbers have also been increasing because of the pandemic-driven emergency to a remote online learning environment. Increasing enrollment means larger nursing cohorts with greater variation in the backgrounds, preparation levels, abilities, and previous life experiences among these learners. As knowledge evolved, the notion of individuals possessing one learning style has since been replaced with the concept of learning as involving multiple preferences, which are not static in nature, but contextually dependent and vary over time. Additionally, learners use variable routes to attaining similar goals, which adds the complexity and multitude of possibilities in differences. Despite variations, many learners are still being educated in very standardized, traditional, and uniform methods, which must be supplemented with academic accommodations for students who require diverse learning support. While organizational policies and support are in place, the culture, practice, and use of available accommodations by learners still falls short of what is required to succeed. To magnify the complexity of the issue, learners requiring academic accommodations or other learning supports are often hesitant to access assistance. Others may not qualify. Despite an increasingly diverse online post-secondary nursing student population, there's no single instructional approach that has been proven to be beneficial for every learner, topic, and situation. Nurse educators are challenged to provide inclusive education to diverse needs through a traditional one-size-fits-all curriculum. Available academic accommodations are not inclusive of diverse needs, further compounding the problem. Thus, a disconnect between student diversity and using a traditional approach to education necessitates attention. I believe that nurse educators can use universal design for learning strategies when designing course curriculum to reduce the prevalence of learning barriers experienced by students in online post-secondary education, offering an inclusive learning environment that extends access to knowledge to diverse learners. I propose conducting a descriptive case study to target the problem of using a traditional one-size-fits-all instructional approach in addressing increasing levels of student diversity in online post-secondary education by answering the research question, how do learners describe and rate the effectiveness of instructional strategies used in a large first-year BSc course based on UDL principles in supporting inclusivity of diverse learning preferences and needs in an online environment. The significance of my proposal study finding include capturing specific attributes of the learner's experience with the inclusiveness of instructional strategies used in the course or the case being studied, and establish which were the most beneficial in meeting their needs. Consequently, it will contribute to the broader purpose of providing nurse educators with guidance that motivates the integration of inclusive instructional strategies for diverse learner needs into classes online. The findings also have the potential to improve access to all students, bringing the benefits to others beyond those with documented disabilities. The proposed study will add to the lack of empirical studies related to undergraduate student perceptions in a large post-secondary online course, and to the overall shortage of data in undergraduate studies. It's anticipated that dissemination of findings will help bring attention to the need and benefits of UDL practices for learners in these settings, while further minimizing the need for retrofitting curriculum by educators. The proposed case study will also serve as a basis for future comparative studies to move beyond this descriptive focus and establish more correlative effects. UDL, as you can see, this is an example of a graphic organizer. It's rooted in the universal design principles that were conceptualized initially for accessibility of the built environment. For example, curb cuts. It was then extended into the educational setting. 5 models of universal design in education exist. I selected the universal design for learning as it's one of the original models that was developed based on extensive previous study in K-12 settings and based on the neuroscience of the learning brain. It was originally defined as a research-based set of principles that together form a practical framework for using technology to maximize learning opportunities for every student. Rose and Meyer, the founders of CAST, or the Center for Applied Special Technology, felt that while technology is an important part of UDL, it's not the sole approach that supports these type of practices. UDL is a theoretical framework that can promote the development of a flexible, inclusive learning environment by using 3 core principles that you can see here vertically of engagement, multiple means of representation, and providing multiple means of action and expression. 9 more specific UDL guidelines and 31 checkpoints in this most recent graphic organizer offers educators concrete suggestions for implementing these in practice. Each of the principles are further categorized horizontally into access, build, and internalize roles, consisting of different guidelines and principles that lead to the goal of UDL in developing expert learners, which you can see on the bottom line of this graph. Those learners are purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, and goal-directed. UDL has been becoming increasingly familiar to educators in the K-12 setting. However, the use of these practices has been much slower reaching post-secondary settings. The scholarly literature reviews of UDL-based practices in higher education suggest a lack of empirically based studies that focus on undergraduate student perceptions related to the implementation of these principles in a variety of different course formats. The available literature on UDL in higher education focuses primarily on the discussion of principles, intervention ideas, a need to implement key instructional principles by educators within diverse settings. And most empirical studies found in the literature in post-secondary education focus on understanding the perspectives of graduate and undergraduate level learners, specifically faculty, practicing, and pre-service educators. Data gathered from studies conducted in a variety of post-secondary settings with students with documented disabilities identified attributes of a good course and instructor as being aligned with UDL principles and their learning preferences. However, not all identified as being disabled or reluctant to disclose a disability. Others experienced barriers related to stigma, awareness, faculty awareness or lack of awareness, unwillingness, and they found a lack of assessment choice. As the advantages of UDL-based strategies become more apparent in the literature for students with documented disability, even fewer study efforts have focused on the perspectives of undergraduate students without documented disabilities, particularly in nursing. 3 key studies are highlighted, including the landmark study, quantitative study conducted in 2011 by Shelley et al., piloting a new one-group pre-post survey questionnaire to measure the effectiveness of UDL instructor training among undergraduate students in a face-to-face introductory psychology course. To follow up, in 2013, Davies and al. Added a control group to the same study. The other highlight that I have here of these studies is Garonsky, Cook, and Lombardi. And I've highlighted this because this study, the study is important to mention as they were the first to examine student perceptions of faculty actions associated with inclusive instruction. They developed a tool called the Inclusive Teaching Strategies Inventory for students. That was a survey questionnaire and based on UDL principles and a prior ITSE survey that was specific to faculty perceptions. And this was the tool that was used to collect data. So there's even fewer articles specific to empirical studies that have been done in nursing. So I classified them under health science research, and I'm still a little bit deciding whether that's the way to go. The one that's most popular is from 2014 from Coomer and Weidman. They conducted a mixed method study of a health science course at a Canadian university. Students registered in an in-person and place-based class that integrated UDL principles were studied using a class survey and semi-structured interviews to obtain some of the perspectives of course accessibility. This study is one of the most frequently studied and probably the most similar to what I'm going to be proposing. There was correlation with improved accessibility and supported a learner-centered approach. There was satisfaction with the course flexibility, reduced levels of course-related stress, and the importance of an educator's presence was also described as beneficial among participants. It was found in this study that there was a decreased academic workload among faculty and a decreased use of accommodations by students needing assistance. The other study that I found kind of similar to health studies was a study conducted by Kennedy and Wilson in 2019 at Canadian Community College of students that were enrolled in an in-person and place-based general arts and science diploma program. Students found that most elements were useful to learning, however, their perceptions of usefulness were not backed up by the performance data. Consequently, additional research is required to establish why the usefulness of UDL strategies is perceived as beneficial to undergraduate students in online settings. So a descriptive case methodology will be used for the proposed study as it can be used to explore a current phenomena or case in depth and within its real world context. This aligns with the course or the case that's going to be studied. I'm going to be using Yin's methodology to follow as part of the case study. The methodology is preferred because the study variables are not manipulated, resulting in a more fluid rendition of the findings. It can embrace different philosophical orientations, such as my pragmatic ontological positioning, which involves a truth that is based in what works best to solve a problem, not on the duality between subjective and objective approaches. That's why quantitative and qualitative data will be included. Multiple sources of information can be used as evidence within a case study, which is desired for the proposed research. And similar to my pragmatic epistemological belief in utilizing numerous ways of knowing in research based on the nature and purpose of the inquiry. The use of mixed secondary data and a convergent mixed methods analysis approach also parallels my pragmatic positioning. When collecting data, the researcher should be practical, focusing on what works best to answer the research question. During analysis, my axiological assumptions involve the consideration that both biased and unbiased perspectives may influence research. Both formal and informal language will be used when reporting the study findings. The case for the proposed study is a first-year undergraduate BSCN course offered through a mid-sized university in Ontario, Canada. And it's required in both collaborative and compressed program degree streams at this organization. The focus includes introducing the learner to himself as a healthy individual, learner, and future nurse. This introductory course is typically offered in person by 2 co-instructors during the fall semester over a 12-week period to a new annual cohort of approximately 230 learners. The units of analysis within this case are students who were enrolled in the fall 2020 offering of the course or case. Prior to the course redesign, weekly classes were historically delivered in large theater-style classrooms for 1 hour and 50 minutes by one of the course co-instructors. Weekly 50-minute instructor-led seminars were held with 9 smaller groups of 25 learners to encourage an individualized application of the knowledge in a supportive environment. My roles. It's important to clarify my current role as an AU grad student and my previous work as the course co-instructor, principal designer, and research investigator of the two research studies that were conducted in 2019 and 2020. In 2019, after receiving an internal grant, UDL-based principles were used to inform major pedagogical course changes. In 2020, as a result of the pandemic, this large in-person and place-based course was redesigned further for online delivery using both asynchronous and synchronous activities. Mixed secondary data will be collected for the proposed study. The decision to utilize mixed secondary data stemmed from a need to align data collection with the rare online offering of this large first-year BSEN course. Mixed secondary data provides a feasible use of existing data and will help build on future studies of similar cases. Following REB permissions from Athabasca University, unpublished anonymized mixed secondary data collected at the end of the fall 2020 semester by a research assistant through an online survey questionnaire and focus group interview will be accessed. Several issues may impact the reliability, validity, and authenticity of data, potentially limiting their degree of generalizability. Reliability and constructability of the quantitative data were established through the selection of a quality instrument for data collection. The ITSE tool has a good overall internal consistency and Chromebag alpha of 0.83. Internal validity is not appropriate, as the purpose of this study is not to establish causality between variables, but provide a description of their perspectives. External validity was maintained by detailing the methodology and theoretical framework assumptions to be used. Data collection was conducted in the fall semester, thus recent. The case boundaries were identified clearly, including the type core design used and selection rationale. Statistical conclusion validity may be threatened by the lower than expected sample size. To maintain integrity of the ITSE tool, minimal modifications were made prior to collecting data. Reliability of qualitative data will be established through intercoder agreement with a co-coder to confirm preliminary code prior to analysis. Prolonged engagement as a co-instructor and triangulation through the use of a mixed methods design were utilized to establish validity of the qualitative data. Collection tools questions also aligned with UDL to support construct validity and merge the findings. A convergent mixed methods approach will be used to analyze the mixed secondary data by bringing both quantitative and qualitative data together and provide more comprehensive results. The results will be reviewed looking for common concepts between the findings while also comparing, considering commonalities, disconfirming information, or whether the information builds on each other. The qualitative and quantitative data will be analyzed separately, each using a slightly different approach that emerged to gain an extensive understanding of the problem and research question posed. Iterative interpretations will be considered and differences in findings resolved with the support of a co-coder until themes become exhaustive. Both qualitative and quantitative data collected will be weighed equally when analyzing it, despite the differences in sample sizes. After completion of each separate analysis, a comparison of the two databases will be conducted to look for concepts across findings, common concepts across findings. A joint display table of the two sets of data will be developed to compare results for each concept identified. An interpretation of the findings will begin once this is complete. Similar to other research methods, the use of existing mixed secondary data for the mixed methods analysis in the proposed case study requires weighing any benefits and risks related to the use of this data. The benefits include maximizing the value of prior research investment in data collection while also minimizing the burden to respondents. Two ethical risks must be considered prior to the use of the data for analysis: re-identification of the participants as students and possible disclosure of sensitive information. To manage these risks, appropriate permissions and evidence of REB approval will be sought. Considering my overlapping roles, participation was voluntary, informed with evidence of consent, and anonymized by a hired research assistant prior to receiving data. Additionally, provisions were made in the consent form to disclose to participants the latter use of their data in my future dissertation studies. Risks were mitigated by limiting study-specific interactions with the students throughout the fall 2020 semester. Research Ethics Board approval was obtained on September 23rd, 2020, prior to data collection. Permissions from REB at Athabasca University and the hosting university that hosted the course will be sought prior to beginning my proposed study. Further to these potential ethical issues, the limitations or influences that are out of the research control and may influence the findings must be considered. Several limitations may impact the degree of generalizability of findings. The study was conducted at one institution during a single semester of the program, thus minimizing the ability to generalize findings to other settings or populations. The original non-experimental mixed methods case study design did not use a control group to compare variables and maintain the confidentiality of participants, both limiting the ability to infer any causality in findings. Confounding variables such as the change from an in-person and place-based to online course delivery format and coexisting pandemic may also influence the findings. The online survey response rate was 17%, which was small considering the class size of 230. Comparison of qualitative and quantitative data is limited considering the diverse questions used in each collection tool. Unequal sample sizes will likely involve different groups of participants, and that may provide an inaccurate representation of the overall distribution. The delimitations or the scope of my proposed descriptive case study will include a mixed secondary data set that was obtained from a study of students enrolled in the fall 2020 online offering of a first-year BSCN course, required in both the collaborative and compressed streams of the BSCN degree program at a single university in Ontario, Canada. The descriptive case design, aim, research question, and UDL theoretical framework will further delimit the focus of this research. Thank you. Questions?
All righty, well done. I didn't jump in with the 3 minutes left because you said you were going to go over, so I was just busy. So where am I at? Yeah, you're at 24.48. You're at 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So
all right.
A couple of suggestions before others jump in. One, you're going to see how difficult it is for people to talk with you because you forgot to number your slides.
Yeah, okay.
So
I
very,
tried doing
very
it,
important.
Yeah.
Okay, so that we can...
it, but I wasn't able to do it. It doesn't seem to do it, so.
Well, you can literally put it, I mean, you can even put a text box in each slide if you have to, if it's not doing it for you. Okay, so first, just a couple of formatting. If you go back way up near the beginning to the slide that is just before problem statement. I think it's slide 4 maybe, or.
Yeah, background.
Okay, on numerous slides where you've put in citations, they need to be maybe one font larger or bold or something they're hard to read. So I'm only going to say it on that one slide because it occurs, you use the same size throughout.
Yeah, and I can make them bigger, no problem.
Yeah, just make them bigger. And I'm going to suggest a huge chunk can come out with, you spent a heck of a long time on your literature review. You don't need to. This committee has read it. So undergraduate students and health sciences, just before methodology, I think.
Take them out.
You just take all of that out. That's going to save you 2 or 3 minutes. Unless someone else has another suggestion or agrees, just jump in. Those are my comments.
Yeah, I really agree with the literature review. It was not necessary.
Yes, they've read everything, so.
Yeah, that would certainly save her a lot of time.
Okay, so would I highlight, like, the only reason I kind of put them in was I thought, with these, it shows that there's, very few studies on nursing, and these show that there's, these are the ones that are there. So
yeah, no, it's great info. It's just that it can only be 20 minutes, and they've read the proposal. They've read it.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
so maybe you could have a single slide in which you essentially say just what you said right now.
Overview. Okay, maybe I'll just do it with the overview slide. Overview of the literature.
Yeah.
But basically with one sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Because that's going to take a big chunk out.
I think what they're mostly looking for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, what they're mostly looking for is how are you going about, what is your proposed way that you're going to go about doing this? And have you thought about all of the little things that can bump you over while you're doing this? I think that's the main focus.
As far as the defense and the PowerPoint, it should be 90% methodology. So you even have a slide I just see right there, the colored one with the chart. Do you have that? Do you see the one near the top now? Yeah. Do you have that in your proposal?
Yeah.
So remove that slide.
You don't need to know about the theoretical.
Well, they do know. They read the proposal. You see what I mean? They're looking to hear, and you sound very confident when you get to your methodology and your data collection. That's what they're looking for.
Okay. Okay, so they don't really, I didn't know what to put there. If I should even put
it's not that they don't care. It's just that they've read it. And if they have a question about it, they'll ask. But you don't need it in the presentation because you're sounding really solid. I'm sure Noreen might have some suggestions, or Peggy Lynn, but you're sounding very, very confident and solid about your methodology. That's what they're interested in for the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, they know that you're going to use the USD. They know that you're using this model. You don't need to elaborate on it. I totally agree with you, Susan.
Okay. Peggy Lynn, are you agreeing too? I'm just going with the voices of experience here.
I'm going to respond a little bit differently. So, what I'm gonna suggest is, because what I kept in mind was what to keep and what to cut.
Yes.
Right? So, what I thought about was and what is the essential story that you need to convey? And thinking about that, it means there's a couple of things that come out of that. One is if you keep clear about what I want to convey in my 20 minutes, then what it does is it means you can drop everything in your script where you say and explain what you're not doing. So there's several parts. You talk about that it's non-experimental, that it's not generalizable, and you go into, anytime that you're explaining something that you're not doing, I think you can drop that because it's not actually essential to your story of explaining it. The other part is when I think about what is essential to tell the story of your proposal is how deep and detailed you need to go. And the reason why I'm suggesting it as this one phrase is that if you start at the very top, the 10,000 foot level, then you might say, I can summarize slide 7 in one line, right? That's a 10,000 foot level, right? So every time that you drill down into really, really, really more and more detail, those are some things that I think that it becomes really clear that you can cut. So when you talked about when you were diving into some of the details around the ethics, you can bring that back up again, more to 10,000 foot level. Say I've got the ethics from AU and I will be applying for ethics from the host institution. Like, in saying that, then what happens is you don't have to explain, because in your script you go into detail about what does that mean and how am I protecting privacy and all those details, which you don't, since you have to cut 5 minutes. I'm suggesting that those are ways that you can think of keeping it at a more general level and not having to explain to your committee what all those details are. Does that
I love your analogy, Peggy Lynn. I love that 10,000 foot, because yes, on this slide, your committee knows exactly what REB or ethic approval means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have to mention it, except to say I'm obtaining ethical permission. Like, they know that. They know you can't move forward without ethical approval.
And keep in mind that if they really want to know these things,
You're cutting out a bit, Noreen, but I know what you're saying. If they want to know details, they'll ask in the question period. So, does that make sense to you, Anne?
So I shouldn't put anything about the REB approval?
Oh, we can't quite hear you.
You're not very loud.
Oh. I shouldn't, can you hear me better now?
No.
Nope.
No?
Not really. Try again.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, still a little low, but we can hear you. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe one sentence in another slide, if it's a joiner to the next saying, and ethical approval will be submitted to REB, and if there's another institution that you have to get it from. Just one sentence. They know all about ethics.
So did I hear you right that you already have AU ethics approval?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't have AU's approval. I have, where I started the study, the data, when I collected it was in the fall. And so prior to collecting it in the fall, I spoke with Gail and asked her what needs to be in REB so that there's no confusion using the information. And she said it needed to have disclose that you're using it for.
You're really very, very quiet. Your microphone is not very loud, Anne. But I know what you're saying. And again, your committee knows that you got pre-approval at that institution to carry out your prior study. None of that has to be talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll give one more example of where you describe things, and you've done it a couple of times, and that was talking about generalizability. So in a case study, generalizability is not an issue. So because you've chosen that approach, then you can actually drop anything that goes into detail about challenges around generalizability, because it's like it is part and parcel of the methodology that you chose, and it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly valid. They wouldn't have approved you to, you know, kind of keep working this way if they had a problem with it. So I know that it's daunting to do that kind of editing to your own work. So do you feel like you have a sense of how you can approach this to drop the 5 minutes?
We can't hear you, Anne.
I think I can figure it out.
Good.
Okay, if you have any difficulties, Anne, I'm sure, like Peggy Lynn and I'm volunteering you, Peggy Lynn, but we can meet again to just say, okay, take out that slide. Okay, take out that slide. Because it sounds like, you know, it is daunting, and it sounds like we're thrashing you. We're not. It's great. We're only trying to get rid of 5 minutes for you.
Yeah, I know I needed that. I've been like, I've cut it down so many times, so I'm pretty happy that I only have 5 minutes to get rid of that.
And
So-
you do need to work on this microphone issue because your committee won't be happy. We can kind of guess what you're saying, but we can't hear you very well.
The problem is, 'cause it's brand new, I just maybe don't know how to work it properly.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't hear you well. Noreen, did you have something to add?
No, I completely concur with what you're saying.
Okay.
And yes, Peggy Lynn, you bang on. I mean, you've done an absolutely wonderful job, and it is really difficult to take 100 or 150 pages and synthesize it into something that is in these very few slides.
Yes.
It's very, very difficult to do, and it's something I think sometimes you have to sort of whittle away at a bit at a time and say, well, yeah, okay, I know I'm really passionate about this, but it's actually a little bit of a sidetrack from what I'm trying to say in my presentation.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's I hope that and as Peggy Lynn was saying, and Susan too, I hope that you can see this as really positive feedback. You did an absolutely wonderful job, but you're just saying a little bit too much in areas that aren't, I think, the areas that the dissertation committee is really going to want to hone in on, you know.
Okay.
And can you say testing a couple of times?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, so there's some kind of, yes.
I took off my mic. I took off my microphone, so.
Oh, there you go again. Like for me, 99% of the times I have no issue. It's tech, because I don't use headphones or I just talk to my PC. I always have. So I think the headphone business is sometimes an issue, and that portable microphone.
Right.
Yeah,
This was helpful because I mean, I literally just got it together in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, refining it. I still don't have a date, so I still need some refining.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good. You don't have a date because now you've got time to chisel away. And again, contact Noreen or Peggy Lynn. I'm going to say anybody who's here. I'm just saying Noreen and Peggy Lynn because they've been through it. They survived and came out the other end. So I'm sure they wouldn't mind looking at it. And if you want, and I think you should have another rehearsal after you pare it down. So again,
yeah, I wouldn't mind.
You know, we can have an extra session, even if there's only 2 or 3 of us, and make sure you're comfortably under 20 minutes and that your slides flow.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else? Okay.
Can I
just a question?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sure.
When you say reach out to Noreen and to Peggy Lynn, I know you shared with us an email once, but I'm not sure what's the best way to reach you, because I really want you to be during my rehearsal, like, and
So I have my old AU email is actually working again. So I'm so
how did that happen? Noreen can't get into hers.
Oh, it's
Your work email?
no, yeah, my old work email. So hard to say an answer in the short. So it's I worked it out with IT and stuff. So it's the steps to actually get it happening were kind of complicated. So
Okay,
Noreen,
so maybe
Noreen, you're working for the university though, right?
No, not anymore.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so my email is my last name, so I will say it and spell it. So it's Mac Isaac. So it's M as in Mary, A, C as in Charles, I, S as in Sam, A as in apple, A as in apple, C as in Charles. So Mac Isaac at athabascau.ca. So that's how you can get a hold of me. But I was going to, so
Thanks.
thank you for
Yeah.
asking, Rima. Noreen, I was going to actually, I was just going to support what Noreen was saying about that, and what you were doing right now of taking 25 minutes and cutting it down to 20 is super hard. So
Yeah, no, I know.
understand it's super hard.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's been a couple days. So I know after the weekend, it'll be done. Just got to keep at it. That's all.
Good girl. Okay, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you everyone for sticking around for 2.5 hours, but
thank you for your help.
We made up for the last session. And please, anybody who wants an extra rehearsal, Rima and anybody else, just email me and we'll set up sessions. I'm just going to end the recording now and hang around in case any of you want to chat without a recording. So good night to everybody. The recording will be up in an hour or two.
And thank you everyone for having me here tonight. I really enjoyed myself. And